Hello, everyone. This is Tiffany Bryant Jackson with Three Bone Theater, the education manager here. And we are still talking about the Chinese lady. Wait, there we are. Today, we're talking about visualizing and costuming and how we take something from concept to actuality. So I have two guests today, our artistic director, Robin Tynes-Miller, who is also directing this wonderful show. Welcome back to the director's seat. And then we have Adrian, who's coming in and doing our costuming. And they are going to show us some beautiful renderings of what they have. And then you are now tasked with coming to see the show so you can see them in person. See how we did that? I'm going to start with you a little bit, Robin. So I want to talk about getting the script, reading the script, and how you started to visualize what you wanted to see in person.
Yeah, so we we probably read this script maybe a year and a half or 2 years before the production is going up next week. And so part of it was that, we are always looking for stories that we haven't told yet on our stage, and kind of new challenges and new perspectives that we want to share. There's been a pretty intense and significant rise in anti-Asian hate crimes and violence, largely because of the COVID pandemic, and misinformation around that. And so, we'd worked with Amy Wada, who's starring in the show before, and I was reading, several scripts and sending them to her, because I wanted to find a vehicle to highlight her on the Charlotte stage in a way that hadn't been done yet. She's been very active in the community, but there hasn't really been a story like this told on Charlotte stages. And so, we both sort of fell in love with the script, fell in love with Lloyd Suh's kind of presentation of it and the poetry of what he writes. And then started kind of with the process of how do we put this production together.
Fantastic. And I know from behind the scenes, when you started to think about this, you did something that many of us do when putting something to the creativity. You use the handy dandy tool of Pinterest, which I love. Pinterest saves so much, but it's a great place to put it. And you shared that with all of us. And then we brought on someone to handle your vision. So, Adrian, I want to give you a chance to just tell us all a little bit about yourself and how you got into the world of costuming and wanting to create magic through wardrobe.
Yeah, well, I got into costuming sometime when I was about 10. I liked watching my favorite movie at the time, still probably is, was Lord of the Rings. And I remember looking at those costumes and being like, I want to be one of the people who gets to build those. So that's how I got into costuming.
I love that wholeheartedly. It is rare for someone at a young age to go that. And I love meeting people who are like, yes, please, more. Robin, how did we find Adrian?
Yeah, so we reached out to another phenomenal costume designer in North Carolina, Ketty Shun, and she has done a lot of work at Children's Theater, so I knew her through that avenue, and I was just reaching out to her to see honestly if she was able to costume the show. We are always really intentional about the demographics of our designers and trying to find as much representation that is on stage as well as in our creative team. And Ketty connected us with Adrian and said, I can't do the show, but I know someone who can, and I know someone who is specifically interested in period pieces. And I was like, well, that sounds brilliant. And so Adrian and I talked, I think over the phone at first, or maybe over Zoom.
Yeah.
They showed me some, wonderful work that they have done in the past, and I just felt really strongly that they were the right fit, and then we were extraordinarily lucky enough that they said yes.
Fantastic. So, Adrian, walk us through your creative process. So, you have this conversation with Robin, you read the script, and then walk us through what happens next in your world.
Yeah, usually I read through the script. First time is just reading it, just kind of getting a sense of the story. And then the second time through, I'm usually marking certain things. Like for instance, it mentions very specifically that she has hairpins, for instance. So I knew that had to be in the design. And so I'm looking at those things. And then I usually like to look at the time period, look at what's happening at the time politically, where we're going there. And then I start going, okay, why would we be using this versus that? And I started thinking, and then the last come usually for me is color, which was good because Robin had a very strong opinion on what she wanted the color scheme to be. So it was good that I kind of had an idea of what I wanted for the pieces, like, but not necessarily the color was not something I was particularly strong on.
Fantastic. I love it. That's the beauty of a creative team, right? You have a vision, and making it work together. Adrian, I know you have some renderings, and I would love to share some sneak peeks for those who are catching us here on YouTube. If you want to share them, we'd love to do it.
Sure. So for our first person, Afong, we have this rendering that I did. And this is kind of when she's, she starts out very young. She starts out as a 12-year-old girl, I think it is, very young, very naive.
14,
She
yeah.
has a very rose-tinted view of America. And so we're kind of, and because she's literally in a freak show, it's literally what she's in. I wanted her to kind of live up to the standard of like your quote unquote Chinese princess, right? Because that's what she was being shown as. And so we're working with a lot of the like standard things that would, it's a lot of extra bells and whistles, She has a flower crown and she has a cloud collar, and it's a lot of extra bits and pieces. And then there's a scene with Jackson. And I think after that, the scales start falling from her eyes a little bit. She starts realizing that America is not as kind to people like her as she once thought it would be. And so you see her start to lose some of her extra pieces. She's gone for a more mature, because she's older, just a stick in her hair, a little bit more mature, a little bit more refined. We've removed the cloud collar and a lot of the makeup and such. And it's just a lot more down to earth. And then a little while later, she decides, I want to leave. And so we're looking at adding, it's called a p-fun, and it's it's just like an outer robe basically. And I wanted something dark, something that A connects her to Adong, because that's his colors, and B is like dark, heavy. She's starting to carry like the weight of the world. She's understanding what it means to not be white in this country.
I love it. Thank you. I love showing the progression of one character and how sometimes something as simple as removing some pieces is removing some other barriers or shields in their world. So thank you for sharing that with us, Adrian. Robin, you noted in this production and all productions, we work really hard to make sure representation is key. I want to talk to both of you because this show requires a lot of traditionalism. Sorry, I have just something flying around. Shows a lot of tradition. It has to be shown because of what she was brought over to show. So you had to be mindful, everyone, of what we're collecting, what pieces are being created. So talk about just really wanting to stay true to that, how you're making decisions on that. And Adrian cut into about as you're gathering pieces or creating pieces, how you're taking into consideration what is needed and what is right.
Yeah, it's interesting because just learning. I think the reason I'm most excited for folks to come see this is that I never learned about Afong Moy until this show. And I think that's the case for a lot of people. And she's so critical to American history and Asian American history and our understanding of where we are now. And so I'm grateful that I've relied a lot on Adriaen for their expertise in the costuming world and wardrobe, and making sure that period is correct. And then we also brought on a wonderful woman who's local to Charlotte named Hong Yu, who is our cultural consultant on the piece. And she's been a fantastic resource for us in terms of making sure not only time period is correct, but anything cultural is, accurate, within the understanding that this is a play and it does have to be dramatized to some extent, but, really giving us a lot of insight. She helped Amy and I figure out what the tea ritual was going to be that happens multiple times throughout the show, knowing that we have kind of a specific amount of time that we have to do it in. So we weren't able to do a full tea ceremony, It's interesting too, because this show, Afong is Chinese, but she is straddling this world of being constantly within the white gaze and being surrounded by things that are not authentic. And so, it's like this, it's a conversation and a tension between, American imperialism and our view of what Chinese is versus an authentic, cultural tradition and understanding of Chinese cultures and ways. And so there's kind of, it's like this, it's a blend of these worlds of, we know that the people who were coordinating her shows were not informed, right? It was like, here are the, first she was brought to sell merchandise, right? And so it was like, some of the things would be authentically, from China or Chinese merchandise that was really, seen as like the high end, what was in fashion at the time for your home and everything, for white wealthy Americans, right? And but we also know that they put merchandise on the stage with her that they just wanted to sell, right? That was not related at all to the culture. And so there's this blend there that's really interesting. And I think, serves well in this conversation of as she's here so long, she feels like she's becoming less and less Chinese, and what that loss of culture does for her, and what American culture has done to her. So
Yeah.
Love to hear your thoughts, Adriaen.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of the show definitely touches on assimilation and the forced assimilation that happens when you come from a culture that's not typically Western. Yeah, for me, because this is in the mid 1800s, this is actually helpful. It's a lot more recent than a lot of the designs that I do. And what that means is we have photographs. So I did a lot of searching for actual photographs of the time, and that's a lot more helpful. It's not something I generally get in a lot of my design work, but as you can see, I have some pictures of actual people of the time. So that was very helpful. Have like real examples of what they would have worn. And then where I can't find that, I look for paintings. For instance, I did not really find any pictures of a Pifun in real life, but there are a lot of paintings of that type of garment. And so, there's that. And then I look around on websites from Hanfu enthusiasts, tumblers and other such things from people who are very into this. And that's how I do a lot of my research.
I love the modern hunt for historical facts that aren't readily available. And I think you hit on something very important, Robin, when you talked about Afong's history is American history. We forget that when we are looking at other cultures as a country. We see it happening now where we are taking away pieces of other people's history because we don't want to acknowledge it. So I'm going to ask you both the question I ask everyone on every one of these. What do you want the audience member to take away? What is, if I said one thing, what do you want an audience to take away with them after seeing this show?
You go
And
first.
you want
I love it. It happened every time. It happened with Amy and Steven. They were like, your turn.
Okay. I think what I want people to take away is how important and powerful it is for us to understand our history in a way that is like our true history, not our nostalgia for what we maybe have been told, the past was like, or whitewashed history, that I was certainly taught in school. So I think, honoring that painful past is what allows us to confront and heal and make different choices going forward. And if we don't understand what has happened, I think it's very hard for us to change that course. I I think also, Afang has these beautiful lines about all of our similarities and all of our differences, and that both are really beautiful. And just to celebrate kind of both of those things in our humanity, in our conversations about race, and our conversations about what it means to be American. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Solid.
I think that what I would like people to understand is that this story is set in a backdrop of history, but it's not history.
Mhm.
This happens every day, and there's a lot of this idea of, oh, when you think of Chinese, what do you think? Oh, you think boba, you think noodles, and I want people to understand that the good things are there, and the things that are generally accepted in the West are there, but what else is there is a whole culture. And I think that people don't like to understand that just because the West hasn't discovered it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, and that we're a whole culture. We're not just bubble tea.
I love it. Yes. I'm gonna add my 2 cents in. I, think if you've watched any of these YouTube channels, at this point you've discovered that Tiffany is a nerd. And one of the reasons she likes her role as education manager is because she gets to dig deep into something too. And I love learning about people and culture and history. And I do think we do a disservice to ourselves to think that, oh, that was a long time ago, because we can look back in recent history. As you mentioned at the top, we have a lot of anti-Asian things going on in our country at this moment in the good Lord's year of 2023, okay, on Beyonce's internet. This is not faraway times. These thoughts, this displaying of other cultures for novelty is not old. It's still happening. So I want everyone, one, get your tickets now. If you have not gotten your tickets, go ahead and get it, because you don't want to be the person left out. 2, come see the show, have some dialogue with your friends and family, and learn some incredible history. See some incredible acting. Okay.
Incredible acting.
See some incredible acting. See some incredible costuming. See some incredible set design, and really, really dive into learning afterwards. This is a personal plug. When you leave the theater, the conversation doesn't stop there. We'll have a discussion guide for you to carry on this conversation. Spread the word about what you've learned. Share the resources of more to read and watch, because it is important that we're all educated as well as being entertained. So for those of you who are ready to buy your tickets, July 28th is the first day of the show. We kick off final show of this season, and we will go into the second week of August. So get your tickets now. We will see you at the theater. Come say hi if you see one of us. Thank you, Robin and Adrian, for taking some time today to chat with me in the world of costuming and just getting a show from the page into actual reality. Thank you very much. See you next time, everyone.